Good Sunday morning. Welcome to WGN-TV Political Report. I'm Paul Lisnick. Tomorrow morning on Capitol Hill, the January 6th Select Committee is scheduled to hold its second public hearing. Now, the committee is expected to hear testimony from White House staffers detailing the president's anger at telling him he had to do something to stop the violent insurrection. Take a listen to Congresswoman Liz Cheney's opening statement on Thursday.
You will hear that President Trump was yelling and, quote, really angry at advisors who told him he needed to be doing something more. And aware of the rioters' chance to hang Mike Pence, the president responded with this sentiment, quote, maybe our supporters have the right idea. Mike Pence, quote, deserves it.
Political science professor and dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at North Central College, Stephen Maynard Caliendo, joins me this morning to talk more about what is next. Professor, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Paul. Good to see you.
So tomorrow morning we get round two. It's a morning session. What do you think the impact is in having that opening prime time session? Now we go in the morning. We losing viewers for all of this?
We might be, but I think that the members of Congress who are responsible for making the decision to do a primetime hearing to start things off probably understood that the networks were not going to preempt all their big time programming that brings in all the revenue for 4 or 5 different times. And so the idea, I think, was Thursday night to get as many eyeballs on as possible, to remind everybody what happened on that day, to generate some interest, and then the typical business of Congress takes place, during the week and oftentimes during traditional business hours. And I think we're back to that now for the rest of these years.
Yeah, I got you on that. So before I look ahead, let me look back at one thing. We had some testimony, not much, a little bit from Ivanka Trump, a little bit from Jared Kushner. It seems as though this committee is aware that if you want to impact people, show people, I mean, President Trump, former president, will go after anybody, even like Bill Barr, who he no longer likes, but you can't go after your own daughter and son-in-law.
You can't, although I think you're right that it's part of my perception on Thursday night was this was part of a larger strategy to isolate President Trump. That is to say, they could only get 2 Republican House members to join this committee. They don't have a lot of support in the polls in terms of Republicans supporting what the committee's doing. But a lot of what was presented on Thursday night was to show President Trump's acting alone. All the people who supported him for all those years, people closest to him, the people that believe in the same policy ideas he had, all were abandoning him on that day, encouraging him to do something different, that he was really acting not alone in terms of there was nobody else because the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers were there, but in terms of typical Republicans, there's a real distancing happening there. And I think Liz Cheney speaking as much as she did was also indicative of that strategy.
So every day there's going to be a hearing. It has its own theme. And what we're going to get tomorrow morning are a series of staffers, inside the White House staffers, who are going to be talking, from what we understand, about President Trump yelling and upset at how things are going. What is listen, the committee could have picked whoever they want to do these presentations and testimony. It seems to me that they're going inside and Trump administration people, because that's where the credibility is going to be.
Right, because they interviewed over 1,000 people in the last 16 months or however long this committee's been doing its work. And right, the people that they're choosing to bring forward during the hearing phase of this are the ones that they believe are going to tell the story that they want to tell. And you're right that those closest to the president, if they have on that day were distancing themselves, and I think again it reaffirms that same message that President Trump was acting uniquely irresponsible in that particular moment, and that should disqualify him for further office and maybe set him up for potential criminal charges if the Justice Department wishes to pursue those.
So as these hearings proceed, we can probably trust the fact that the committee will make its point, and they will point a lot of blame at former President Trump, that he's in so many ways responsible for all of this. But I feel like I need to ask you, maybe we'll revisit this after the hearings, so what? The committee can't do anything to him.
Well, I think so what is a 2-point. I have no inside knowledge about what the members of Congress are thinking, but I can tell you there's a couple things. One is to make the case that President Trump should not be considered for future office, whether that's an official designation, the Justice Department wants to pursue something, or whether it's just in the court of public opinion that this is somebody who is not qualified to serve. I think we heard also last week Betsy DeVos for the first time really talked about a meeting where the 25th Amendment was being discussed. Again, people closest to the president at the time were really really, really worried. So I think that's an important part of this for sure. The second part of it is to get it on the historical record. We remember, of course, the Watergate hearings and how important that was. Of course, we had a sitting president then. The stakes were very different. But in terms of having a formalized and have something on the permanent record and being a part of our American culture, I imagine the committee believes that that's an important element of this as well.
You know, and I know you understand as well the power of primacy and recency, depending on how you want to look at it. The opening Thursday night would have been the primacy effect, and that closing night in prime time, that might be the recency effect, getting people to the beginning and the end, with hearings in between. What should we expect in terms of impact of the hearings as we continue on in this process?
Well, I think you and I have been very careful. You have such a strong law background, Paul, to not to be talking about this like it's a trial, although it was hard for me Thursday night not to think about what was happening there, more like an opening statement. They were giving a roadmap. They were giving a preview. In fact, several times they were saying things like, you will, really setting seeds for the viewers to know as we move forward in time, these are the things you ought to be looking for, and these are the way the dots are going to connect, so that when we get to the final day of testimony or the final day of presentations, it's going to look more like a closing argument, right? Where it's, this is what you heard, this is how it all connects, and this is the argument that we're making. But it's not an argument for guilt or innocence. It's an argument about what happened that day.
And I will take that as your closing argument. Professor Stephen Maynard Caliendo, thanks for joining me this morning. We'll talk again soon. Thank you, sir.
Great to see you, Paul. Good morning.
All right. Coming up next on WGN-TV Political Report, 2 Republicans are fighting to become the party's nominee for Secretary of State. Can the GOP take back a statewide position that's been held by Democrat Jesse White for nearly 25 years? You'll hear from the candidates when we come back.